listening to Stories from Real Life, a podcast by engaging storytellers for engaged story listeners. Here's your host, author and journalist, Melvin E. Edwards.
Hello, and welcome to this May 28th edition of Stories from Real Life. I'm your host, Melvin E. Edwards, and this week we have another example of why everyday people are the most interesting people. These are the stories from real life.
Today on Stories from Real Life with Melvin E. Edwards, our guest is a coach and a candy man. Owner of an epic beard.
I mean, it's pretty impressive. Like, a lot of guys can't grow beards.
He also has the world's best last name. From New Braunfels, Texas,
Ride 'em, cowboy!
tennis coach Jason Edwards has some sweet stories about continuing his grandfather's candy business.
My mom always said life was like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get.
Welcome to the milestone 50th episode of Stories from Real Life.
I could eat about 1.5 million of these.
Thank you to my wingman, Jon Williams, for another incredible introduction. Those intros add so much flavor to the podcast. Thanks, Jon. As you heard in that intro, my guest this week is high school tennis coach Jason Edwards. Coach Edwards, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So my first question is an important one. How long is your beard and how long did it take you to grow it?
Actual growing out was probably 3-4 years ago. I'm going to say 4 years ago. I used to keep it shaved up nice and neat. And then one day I was like, you know what, let's see what happens. Let's see how long I can get this thing. But it's probably, it's over 12 inches, probably close to 15 inches in length.
And what happens in the summertime when you live in Texas, so I know it's got to be uncomfortable.
In the summertime, I'm thinking about cutting the sucker off. It gets warm, it gets hot, it gets itchy. But my wife won't allow it, and my barber, she won't allow it either. Every time I go to her, I say, all right, I was like, I'm thinking about trimming it, taking it off. And she's like, yeah, no, you're not. You have one of the best beards. We're going to keep it.
Do you have to put product in it, like if you had a ponytail or something?
You're right. Yeah, actually, I mean, I have beard oils, and I haven't used the wax, but I have some other products that I use off and on. I don't probably use it as much as I'm supposed to, but I still do, and it stays soft, and I want to get it long enough to braid it at one point.
So that's going to be interesting to see. You'll look like a pirate or something at that point.
Right.
All right. So I have a question for you here from your son, Levi, who said,
How often would you say you get compared to Kratos in your entire life? Like, how many people have called you Kratos?
Well, coming from him all the time, he always calls me that. He wants me to dress up on Halloween like that. And then I think it was my birthday or Father's Day. One year, he actually, him and my wife got me a drawing of Kratos, one of the scenes, and framed it, and it's hanging in our game room.
So do people actually call you that when you're out in public?
The family does, the kids do, and a few neighbors have as well. But usually if I'm out and about, people will stop and ask me about the beard and basically how long I've been growing it. And they'll always say, I really like it. It's really nice. And there's been a few times that ladies will ask, can I touch it? Can I just touch your beard?
Hey, don't touch me.
Yeah, I'll look at their husband. I'm like, are you sure about this?
We may need to do some research to see if there's any overlap in our family tree since we share the best last name in the world.
That's right.
So what do you know about your Edwards genealogy?
I really haven't researched it. My dad's side of the family, they're from Brady. He was born and raised Brady, Texas. He was born and raised there, and he left Brady early and moved, I want to say maybe before he's 20, if I'm not mistaken, and moved to Abilene. And that's where he settled down. He passed away in 2001. And really, that side of the family has really all passed away. So I really don't have anybody to ask or talk to about it. And I haven't researched it myself.
Well, I may need to help you look into that, because I'm definitely interested in genealogy. I've got lots of resources, and I'd be happy to help you if you're ever interested in that.
Yeah, I would be interested. I bet you there's a connection somewhere.
Somewhere. Both our families have been in Texas for generations.
Right. I always introduce you at work. If I talk about you, I'll either say, well, that's my cousin Edwards or my brother Edwards.
I always tell them you're my younger brother. I did say I started out saying twin brother.
Yeah,
that just confused the kids.
Well, when you had started working with us, and a student would say something about if I was gone at tennis or whatever, and they're like, I said, well, who did we have yesterday? And Mr. Edwards. I'm like, no, I wasn't here. And they're like, no, Mr. Edwards was here. I was like, no, I was gone. And they're like, the other one. I was like, there's another one.
That's really funny. All right, so let's talk about your candy company a little bit. It's called Papa's Pride, and your papa his name was Cliff Stringfellow, and to me that sounds like a British poet. So tell me something about him.
Well, he passed away in 2016. He settled in Abilene and the majority of his life there, but he was a World War II veteran, Marine. He was in sales most of his life after the war. He did, like, I forget what you call them, sales for grocery stores and things like that. Sales reps and things. He worked in the candy business from probably the late 70s. He worked for Abilene Candy, lollipop manufacturing in Abilene. And then in 84, he opened his own candy business. My grandmother, Glenda M., opened it, or as we call her, Grumpy. Prior to the candy business, they actually owned a little convenience store. They called it a convenience store, but it was more like just a little market, corner store market, a little grocery store called Save a Minute. They owned that from the mid-60s to the mid-70s, I believe it was. He grew up in the Ranger, Texas area. Ranger, and then back around Sweetwater and Abilene area. So he kind of stayed in the big country for most of his adult life. But yeah, we call it, my candy company is called Papa's Candies. At one point I called it years ago. I had started on the side and ran it for a little bit, and things happened in life and I had to shut it down for a little bit. But at that time I was calling it Papa's Pride. Started back up in October of last year and named it Papa's Candies. And the Papa Pride that you referred to, that's our original peanut brittle. We call that our Papa's Pride. That's his recipe. And then from that, we have made a few other kinds. We do chocolate, s'mores, also do some cayenne, pecan, jalapeno, a few different flavors that we experimented with and still trying some more.
So what was it like growing up around Papa's candy store?
Oh, it was really a blessing. It was unique. So they started their store in 1984. And, well, I'd say in 84, but right before, probably 83, my grandmother and him started it just at home, their kitchen table. They would repackage, repurpose, mix assorted orders for customers, ship them out. And then in 84, he found a building in Baird, corner lot, had a little building on it and a vacant lot next to it. So he started the repackaging business down there, specialty mixes and things, and operated out of that. And then went and got a loan to build his candy factory. So him and another employee, family friend of, after they started, I mean, Curly, he was always around. The two of them basically built the factory, installed everything and got it going. And Curly was the lead tech operator of the factory. But it was great as a kid. I mean, I was in third grade at the time when it started. I remember going up to the opening of it, just the actual candy store itself. And once the factory was on there, I mean, and the factory has been sold a couple times. It's back open now. And at that time, and still to this day, there's only 2 of them like it in the United States. And what sets them apart is that they print on the stick of the lollipop, and they also print on the lollipop itself. So there's only 2 places I believe it's in the world that do, no, the U.S., and they ship all across the world.
So what was it like for a third grader going to a candy store opening that was owned by his grandpa and he could eat as much as he wanted? What was that like for you?
They would never tell me no. If I wanted to try something, I got to try just a little bit of everything. They would have I couldn't even imagine how many pounds of candy, but just saltwater taffies, mitts, sweet tarts, hard candies, licorice, just all kinds stacked up, all in that building, and just boxes and boxes for about probably 3/4 of the wall of the front building was all assorted candies. And then in the front of it, at that time back, we had VCRs and things like that. They also did movie rentals. So they set that up at the front, and then he would have little candy bags set up, or what they call them, seconds. So lollipops that maybe the print wasn't right or the stick wasn't right, they would bag them up as seconds and sell them for a big old bag for a pretty good price. So I remember, I'd go stay the night with them. I always got to pick out a movie to watch, give me a bag of candy, and go spend the night or the weekend with them.
Best weekend ever, I'm sure.
Oh, yes.
So did you use that candy to win and influence friends?
Well, as we got older and were able to drive and move around our teenage years, like I say, we called my grandmother Grumpy, so it was Grumpy and Papaw. We called her Grumpy because my sister couldn't pronounce grandma when she was my older sister, so it'd come out Grumpy, and so that just kind of stuck. And their candy business was called Grumpy Specialties. But my friends all knew them, my close friends, they all knew them as Grumpy and Papaw, and we were always over there, family dinners or get-togethers or whatever, and they'd always have bags of suckers around, and they'd pass them out to friends, and a few of them got to see how the plant operated, and they were pretty impressed with it. It's something pretty neat to see.
I'll bet you everybody wanted to be your friend just to sort of get in on the candy edge that you had.
Right, get the candy hookup.
All right, so go ahead.
I was going to say also, so my grandfather had that, and then my mom, when I was 8th grade, 9th grade, I think it was 9th grade, she opened her own little candy store inside of a Sears. They had an empty space, and she got to talking to them, and she opened basically a little snack bar, candy area. So she had a variety of different candies to choose from, sell it by the pound or however much you wanted. And then we had a little snack shop. So my friends got to know that pretty well too. I worked there until I was like 14 to 16, and then went on actually to work for Sears through high school. But I had some friends that worked in the shop, and would always stop by there and get something to eat, some popcorn or burger or something.
All right. So with your peanut brittle that you mentioned earlier, I've eaten multiple bags of the peanut brittle, and I can tell you it's the best I've ever had.
Well,
and I consider myself a peanut brittle expert. and I'm very selfish about one thing in life, and it's my brittle. My kids know, don't ask me for my peanut brittle. I'll get you something else.
Right.
I'm not sharing this. So how did you manage to get Papa's peanut brittle recipe?
Well, I was doing a fundraiser for the Leukemia Society, and it was back in probably 99, 2000, somewhere in that area. We were raising money for them, but they would like train you for a marathon, and when we started out the 5K and things like that. And I was discussing with my grandfather about some ideas of fundraising, how to try to support them and bring in some money. And he said, well, why don't you sell them some peanut brittle? He goes, I'll show you how to do it. So him and my grandmother showed me how to cook it their way. And prior to me learning it, it was just my grandparents and then a friend of theirs. It was a family friend that they knew years before. He knew how to make it as well. So they took the time and showed me how to make it and helped me master it to the way he made it. And it's been a blessing. After that, for that event itself, I just made up a bunch of bags. We had an event downtown Abilene, kind of like I believe it was called Art Walk, something like that. And we just set up a little table with some signs and put a donation jar out there. And I didn't know what to price it at. I just would pass out samples and told people, whatever you want to give, it's totally up to you. And we sold out of it really quick. People were paying $20 for a little bag. And of course, they were paying more because it's going to a good cause, but they were, they would taste it first and then they were like, oh yeah, we got to have this. And so that kind of sparked seeing how the community reacted to it. And I like to pass a sample out because I want to talk to the customers. I want to hear the stories. Like you said, it's something that you won't share with people, your peanut brittle. And I talk to, all variety of ages. And when I'm doing the business, and people will either say, my grandparents used to make this, or my grandma would make this for the holidays, or if I speak to, seniors, and they're like, I used to make this, but it just got too much and I quit making it. And I just like to hear their stories. So after selling it with that fundraiser or raising money, using it to raise money, I decided to, around the holidays, I started making some, selling to coworkers and things like that. And it went really well. I helped pay for Christmas one year. And after that, I thought, let me give this a shot. So I found a building outside of Abilene, got all my permits, started my business, and bought everything I needed and ran it for a while. I was doing flea markets. I sold to a shop in the Mall of Abilene, sold to a shop up in Lubbock at their mall, and a few other places, small stores. But mainly it was, the Lubbock and Abilene store did really well, especially Lubbock. I was shipping them 40, 50 pounds a week, and they would sell out. And then I would hit a flea market, and I can cook all the day before and go set up, and I'd sell out in a couple hours. And then I have to go back home, cook again for the following day, and I would sell out again. I say life happens, things happen. I got to a point where I wasn't able to do it anymore. So I would just over the years just do some for family, for friends, neighbors, during the holidays, or it didn't have to be a holiday. I might just say, hey, you know what? I want to make some. I'm going to go get the supplies and just make a little batch. Started doing that more often. And then I was like, well, talked to my wife. I was like, well, let's try to give this a shot. So like I say, back in October, I want to say it was October, maybe first part of November of last year, we started doing it, started hitting shows again, flea markets, pop-up markets. And then my biggest one was the San Antonio Christmas show. It's the weekend before November, or the weekend before Thanksgiving every year. Never been to it. It's at Freeman Hall. I just looked at online about it, kind of see what kind of crowds it drew. Reached out to them, and I was able to secure a spot First time ever doing it, didn't know what to expect. We thought we took a lot of candy. I mean, we cooked for days. It was some long hours making it, got it up there, and we stayed there, I think, all but maybe an hour, 30 minutes before it closed down. And we had like 6 to 8 bags left. And when I say bags, all my bags are 4-ounce bags, and I just sell them in different quantities. But we had about 6 to 8 of those 4-ounce bags, and I swear we took over 300 to start.
Wow.
So we got some food, went home, came home, started cooking again, and went the next morning, set up, and we were gone. We were sold out within 3 hours.
Wow.
So
That's a lot of candy.
Oh, it was a lot of candy. That weekend, I think we might have slept 2 or 3 hours. I mean, it was a lot of cooking because all my stuff is fresh. Like your orders that you've placed with me, you'll ask for some, and I'll tell you I'll have to make you some up because I don't. Well, for one, it doesn't last long. If I make some and I put the word out that I have some, it's not going to sit around. But I do. I've gotten to a point. I just do it where I'm at now, just as it's ordered, or if I have a show coming up, then I'll make it, and it's always fresh.
So what makes your brittle different from other just store-bought brittle?
Really? Like talking to my wife and things, it's not, I don't really do anything different than what some others do. But yet the way my grandfather, I guess the care he took into it and what he showed me how to care for it and cook it, you can taste it. And it just comes out in the quality of it. It's thick, it's fluffy, it's light and airy.
Buttery, melts in your mouth.
Yes, it's real buttery. Like I said about the samples, I have to get people to sample it to understand, because people have had bad experiences with brittle before, and maybe their teeth can't handle it. It might stick to their teeth. It might be too hard. Their teeth might be too brittle. And so I try, and I love the challenge, because I'll go to offer a sample and I can't eat that. It's this. I completely understand. I said, why don't you try a piece? And one the exception, if somebody says that their teeth's not in the best of shape or it's going to crack, I'll tell them, I'm pretty sure this won't do it, but I'm going to take your word for it.
It's like, worth it anyway.
Yeah, I don't want you to hurt yourself trying to come after me. But 99% of the time, if I get somebody to try it, they'll buy it. At that show in San Antonio, we were set back. I mean, that if you've never been to it, I suggest. I mean, I'm not getting paid anything from them, but that show is huge. There was a lot of vendors, a lot of people, just a wide variety of things. But there's actually 3 other peanut brittle, which I was surprised, peanut brittle companies there. And we were at the back of the show, but we still sold out. And I'd walk around and kind of gauge how things were. And my booth was always packed. I had customers that would walk by and I'm like, hey, I see you have already bought some from somebody else, but do me a favor, try mine, because I'm assuming you tried theirs. So try mine and be honest, let me know. You're not going to hurt my feelings. I just kind of want to know the comparison. And they would buy more from me. And they'd be like, man, I wish I would have saw you first. We're going to be there again this year. Luckily, a spot came available where I'm going to be closer to the front. I'll have a corner booth. So I'll be some more space and more visible. But it's just, you ask what made it different. I guess just the love and the care. My grandfather wouldn't settle for anything but the best. And he kind of passed that on to me. When I had my first shop, when if I thought a batch was too sticky or was too hard, I would call a friend of mine, former coworker. He just lived down the street from my shop. I'd call him up. I'd say, hey, I have this batch that's questionable to me. Come down here and try it. And I'd have him try it because he had false teeth. And he was able to eat mine. He was hesitant at first when I first offered him some, because, man, I got dentures. I can't eat this stuff. I was like, yeah, you can. Try it. So if I had a questionable batch, I would call him, and he'd come down there and try it, and I didn't ever throw a batch away that he said was good. But I have thrown many batches away that I'll try, and there's something about it I don't like it. I mean, flavor would be good. It might, to me, seem sticky, might seem a little too hard, or just not what my expectations of it is. So I would trash it.
Okay. All right. So what do you think Papa would think about your legacy of carrying, or you carrying on his legacy of the peanut brittle?
I would hope to say he'd be proud. When I make it, I think of him. Just standing there cooking it, and I can picture him. I can see him. I can hear his words, kind of talk to me about it, or if I have a question. I know the recipe by heart. I've made it so many times now, but he actually typed it up for me before he passed, and I didn't receive it until actually after my grandmother passed. She kind of kept it in a folder for me, but he had typed me a little note, and he put instructions on there, and then signed it at the bottom and put his phone number at the bottom, like I didn't know what it was. But I'll pull that out, look at it. Or my grandmother also, she wrote it down one time for me, and I have it, and I'll still look at it. It has her handwriting in it, and just give me some pride. That I think they'd be proud of it.
Oh, that's a pretty special treasure to have their handwriting and know they wanted you to have it and to share it with other people. So let's talk about your current family a little bit. You have a blended and a multiracial family, and you got 6 sons. So tell me about that group.
Okay, my oldest son is my biological son, Hayden. He's 27 from a previous marriage. He's in Abilene. He's, I say more, I guess the title you would give him, event planner. He does flea markets, parties, brings parties together, music, throws different shows around Abilene, wrestling shows up in Houston, Dallas, other parts, things like that. And then here at home, currently at home, I have 2 16-year-old boys. My wife and I have adopted four boys. We're foster adopted house parents. We've been doing this since 2019. Through that, like I say, we've adopted 4. I have one child, one boy, who's 16 in the house, that he's our last foster child, and we have plans on adopting him in the pretty soon. Getting all that paperwork done for that. Out of the 4 that we have adopted, only 2 of them are blood related, 2 brothers. Our other 2, they were not related, but our first 2 we adopted, they're not related, but they had spent about 3 years, I want to say, living in the same foster home. So they were, I would say, family. They thought of each other as family at the time. That's really the only ones that have been around, the constant, for so long. All my children have been in foster care for a while. They've been in the system, been adopted, went back to the system. So we're the second ones to adopt them. And we took in, I'll say all teens, but 2 of them came to us at 12. I turned 13 shortly after, but they actually came to us at 12. The rest have all been teenagers. Right now, out of the adopted ones, one's in the Army. He's 21 now, graduating high school, starting his career in the Army. The second one we adopted, he's 21 as well, graduated high school. He graduates tomorrow from the fire academy. He's already went through EMT. Now he's doing the fire academy. Next one's 20. He's a junior in college. Wants to go into physical therapy, occupational health field. And then my 16-year-old that we adopted, or our last adopted son, he's a junior, getting ready for his senior year. He'll be 17 this month. He's in powerlifting. He was a football player. His biological brother is one that's in college. He got into wrestling. He was a varsity wrestler. The first two adopted, they weren't into sports. They were just average teenagers, school, work, friends, things like that. Our foster son that we have, he's 16. He's a junior as well, getting ready for his senior year. Before us, he never did any sports, anything like that. He is a computer kid, gaming kid. That's what he lives for. But his freshman year, he with the older son that was in wrestling, he went and talked to the wrestling coach, and his freshman year, he goes, you know what, I'm going to try this. And he got into it, and he's finished up at his third year.
Nice.
He'll be going into it his senior year, and he stayed. All my kids that have done sports, they've stayed dedicated to it. It's a lot of work that goes into it.
Nice. Tell me the story about how you managed to adopt each one of them.
So I'm sure we'll talk more about this, but my background comes from, I was in the Army for a few years. I was in infantry. Did some various jobs. Then I started working for the Texas Department of Criminal Justice in the 99 state prison system. I did that off and on for 16 years, supervisor for 12 of those years. My wife worked there as well. We left working for the prison for a short time. We worked for a children's home. I was hired as a respite house parent. And then I also did case management, safety officer, activity coordinator. Kind of if they needed something done, I was doing it. My wife, she was their intake coordinator, and she volunteered to help us house parenting too when they were short. So we worked with kids then, and the prisons are working for their correctional system in that aspect in the prison. It's pretty rough. It takes a toll on you, mentally and physically. The stuff you see, the stuff you deal with. And I had that time off, recovering and going through all this. And a friend of mine, we were actually neighbors years before. We both worked at another unit together. He had left the prison system, and he was a teacher. He got into teaching. And he said, well, why don't you try teaching? So anyways, I got into that, and my wife switched over from CPS to the adoption side of it when we moved. And just seeing the need, just going from the prison side of seeing what happens to some people. And I'm not saying blaming what some criminals do on their, because how they grew up at home, because some of that, it attributes to it, yes, but to me, you can't put all the blame on it. But just looking at paperwork and seeing the history of some of the offenders and seeing, they started doing drugs when they were 12, 10, 11, 12, and then into hard things or crimes and gangs. And that's something when we worked at the children's home that I'd talked with the kids about, and the co-workers at children's home. I mean, there's got to be something to break the cycle. Like, there has to be something we can step up and do. So when my wife started working for the adoption side of it, CPS, we talked about it, and she honestly came home. Our son Fernando, that we adopted, one of our first boys, she had actually met Fernando through another case worker, and she had said, if we were ever in a position to adopt, I would adopt him in a heartbeat. So we talked about it, and she went on. she's like, well, if we're going to do this, I can't work for CPS. If we're going to foster and adopt, I can't work for CPS. So she left CPS and went to work at another children's home. And I was teaching at the time, or I just started teaching. And she was at the children's home for a while, and she saw where Fernando was needing a home. The home he was at was closing. He needed somewhere to, when a child needs a home, they send it to all the agencies, whatever children's homes in the area, churches, so caseworkers, all that stuff. They send it out and they try to find a placement. And he happened to come up. So we talked about it. We got our home inspected and everything, got licensed by the state to operate as a foster home. And we decided we want to do foster to adopt. You have some homes that are just strictly foster home. I mean, the kids are never going to be adopted. And some kids, that's what they want. They just need somewhere to go. They want to turn 18 and then be on their own. And not saying they don't build ties with that family they're with or bonds, because they do, but it's just whatever they've been through or whatever, they just don't want the adoption side of it. But I don't think I can handle that myself. If you're coming to my home, we're going to do foster care. We're going to go all out. So we were doing the foster adopt. Fernando came to us.
Oh.
The home he was at, there was, like I said, another child there that he had been with for about 3 years in that home. And he was going to get placed somewhere else. And I don't know, after talking to him and seeing my wife and I was like, well, we have room. Let's just take both of them, see if they're both willing to come stay with us. And they did. So that was the summer of 2019. I want to say it was. Yeah, I want to say summer of 2019. That's how we got our first two boys. And our other two boys came to us in end of January of 2020. I was at work, and the first two boys went to school where I was working at. I got a call from my wife before I got off, and she said, hey, I just got a call for a placement. Two brothers are needing a place to stay. So I need you to stop at the store, stop at Walmart on the way home. I need you to pick up 2 beds, sheets, linen, everything. Pick up some more groceries, and they'll be here later tonight. So I was like, yes, ma'am, that's what I'll do. So me and the boys, once school was out, I was off work, we went and stopped at Walmart, got some beds, got everything they needed, and went home and set their room up and waited for them. And they got there pretty late. I'm going to say 11:30 that night. Came in, we just kind of talked to her for a little bit. We knew they were exhausted, knew they had been through a hell of a day. Literally, they got out of school and was told, you're going somewhere else because of the situation they were in at that house. So they just let them come in and try to give them their space for a little bit and acclimate to us. But yeah, that's how we got into it. I really think, working in the children's home was a blessing. And I'm 6'3", 250, 260 pounds, bald and big old beard, and don't like to smile a lot. But and then when I'm around like children's home or now my students, my kids, my sons, they all, if I'm not, if Levi's not referring to me as Kratos, then they're calling me just a big teddy bear.
So how's everybody adjusted to being together?
Oh, I'm not going to lie and say it's been all smooth sailing. We've had our ups and downs, just like any household. It's a little bit harder when you have, 4, 5 teenage boys, all from different backgrounds, different trauma, different experiences. Even, the brothers, they experienced a lot of the same stuff, but they didn't experience a lot of the same stuff. So everybody's story is different, and and their backgrounds are different. But honestly, I have an older brother, and we were growing up, there was a lot of fights. But one of our rules is, you respect each other, you don't fight each other. And we've been fortunate to have all these teenage boys that our house hasn't been torn apart. There's been arguments, there's things like that, issues come up, but overall it's been a great experience. Proud of all my kids. They're all doing great and love them to death.
Yeah, it sounds like you've put together your family the same way you carry on Papa's peanut brittle. Lots of love and attention.
Yes, sir.
Great to hear. So, quick question about your family again. You told me that you enjoy spending time with your family while bowling, watching movies, cooking out, going to the beach, or Texas Rangers games. So I'm curious as to the most memorable question you've ever gotten from strangers while you're out with your family.
Well, really, we'll get looks. Let's say I'm 6'3". My wife, don't get me wrong, I might be wrong, 5'9", 5'10". She's tall. She's not short. She has short hair, blonde. Sometimes it's bright, sometimes it's not. And then we have our boys with big curly hair, hangs down in their face, or some little fro. People kind of look at us, but they don't really usually ask questions. But here, it was like within the last week or two, my wife and I were talking to someone, and we were talking about the kids, this and that, and my wife showed her a picture because she'll be quick to pull out the phone and show all the family photos, and she's showing pictures, and I'm bald-headed. My wife's blonde-haired, brown hair, and this person looked at the photo and she goes, "Where'd they get their hair from?" We just started laughing. Like, of all the questions, that's the one that comes up.
That's really funny. So what advice do you have for somebody who might be interested in being a foster parent or an adoptive parent?
And it's something that's hard. It's something that, my wife has, I would say, mastered this more than I have. You got to be pretty thick-skinned, but you got to have a big heart. You can't take everything so personal. And that's what I say when she's mastered it, not taking everything so personal. If the child's acting out or if they're having problems, you're the one that's there. You're the one they're going to take it out on. And when there's been blow-ups or triggers to their traumas and stuff, and they've reacted, you'll get a lot. They'll get a lot said to you. You might have animals, toys fly by you, by your head or whatever, but just be patient and just let them know no matter what. You love them. It hasn't always been easy. A few months ago, we hit a rough patch with one of the boys, and it was hard. It hurt. A lot of the stuff we went through, a lot of things that were said to us, it hurt. But knowing they know they can, no matter what, they can overcome it. They can, we're here for them. I've told the boys before, years ago, I'm real big on don't yell at my wife, don't disrespect her. If you have an issue and you need a minute, tell me, I'm having a hard time or I need to get this off my chest. And I said, if you want me to sit there and you want to yell at me, cuss at me, get it off your chest, whatever you need to get off your chest, just tell me and we can do that. But don't let it build up to the point where you just explode and lash out at everybody. And it's worked. We've been around our kids long enough where we can pick up just like any parent. when they're having a bad day or something's off or they're not acting like they usually do, something, something's bugging them or they don't know how to react to things. Because when we got our boys, we expose our kids to a lot of life situations, just like everyday kids. We want them to be able to handle growing up and being on their own and experiencing life. But when our first two boys came to us, like we went to the movies, and I'm like, all right, well, if you want a snack or whatever, go up there, order what you want, give them some money. Or actually, it was at the gas station, the convenience store. I was like, well, you go inside, buy what you want. I want to pump gas or whatever. And they didn't know what to do. They had never had to do it themselves. And they were teenagers. We went to restaurants and they really weren't sure what to order or how the whole procedure went. So it's just exposing them to things, normalizing it. But don't go into it thinking I'm going to save everybody. I don't think you don't do it to save, I guess you would say, kid, you know what I mean? Like I go into it just because I have a lot of love to give and a lot of support to give them. And I just want to help them in any way I can. Like I say, it hasn't always been easy. And you don't always see the seed that you planted in them, and until years later. I know one of our sons was honored at an award ceremony a couple years ago with the child placement agency we used, or they actually asked him to speak. It wasn't an award, but they asked him to get up there and speak at one of their banquets or galas. And this kid was a nervous wreck. He was pacing and pacing and pacing and pacing and looking at his notes. And like, I hadn't heard his speech. He didn't tell my wife his speech. And when it was time to get up there, he got up there and didn't use his notes or anything. He just got up there and spoke from the heart and kind of told his story and then kind of talked about us some. And that's what I mean when you don't always see it. It might take a few years, but seeing him get up there and able to speak like he did a few years ago, he wouldn't have been able to do that. And
that's pretty awesome.
But we've talked to a lot of couples and different things about foster parenting. I've done interviews before about it, and I'm pretty blunt and to the point. I don't always say the right thing. But I was asked one time on an interview, what do you think about foster care or about being a foster parent? And I'm like, it sucks. Like, it's hard. I was like, they just kind of looked at me. I'm like, man, it's not easy and it can suck, but the reward for it is tenfold. You're going to have your hard days, but when you have your good days, they're good. And seeing this child feel safe, possibly for the first time in a long time. And like I say, I don't always say and do the right thing. I make mistakes just like every parent. And, you always hear, well, nobody else's parent does this or they do that. It's just, they're not my biological, they're not my blood, but they're my boys. They're my sons, no matter what.
That's amazing. And I want to thank you for being willing to do that and open your home. So we're sort of running out of time here. I just have one more question that I want to ask you, unrelated to the issue that we've just recently been talking about. You became a criminal justice teacher after you worked as a Texas correctional officer. I understand that connection. But how did you go from being an Army veteran to a high school tennis coach?
Well, that was actually just by luck. I was already teaching a few years in criminal justice. My coworker was a assistant tennis coach. His head coach retired, so he promoted to head coach, and he needed an assistant coach. And he has seen me in the classroom, seen me with my criminal justice club, and at contests and things like that. And I never played tennis in high school or anything like that, per se, on the team or anything, but I played tennis some. And they asked if I wanted to give it a shot. And I've learned a lot of stuff from him, and I've learned a lot of stuff from the kids, the players. And I mean, I enjoy it. I mean, the thing about tennis is it's basically a year-round sport, because you have your fall and then you have your spring. And we're out there a lot. We spend a lot of time with our players, whether it's practice or tournaments. We're bumping up to 6-8, so we're going to have in the fall tournaments matches twice a week, and then in the spring we already had them twice a week because of JV and varsity. So we're gone a lot as well. If we're not at practice, we're 3 days a week, and then tournaments, matches 2 days a week. Did I ever think I would be a tennis coach? Not at all. I would have never. I wouldn't have ever picked what I'm doing in any of this. I never thought I'd be a criminal justice teacher, or, a foster parent, adopted 4 kids, getting ready for my 5th. But I've enjoyed all of it. I moan and groan and complain like, everything's got its pros and cons, but I'm blessed. And when I'm out there, whether I'm in the classroom, in the school's almost here, we're ready to be out. The kids are ready to be out. And I might be having a bad day, but just watching the kids grow, watching whether it's in the classroom, the criminal justice, or on the tennis courts, it's just, that's the reward for it. It's just a blessing. We had foreign exchange students this year, 4 of them that played tennis for us. They ended up getting my criminal justice program, the after school club, and went to competition, and they learned new things. And, they had no idea what we were doing in tennis or in the criminal justice club, some of the stuff we do. And I was able to watch them and introduce them to something new that they never experienced. So that's just, it's all been rewarding. Like I say, I never would have imagined I would be doing this.
But you're doing it and doing it well. So that's a good way to wind down this conversation. Again, I know I just said that, but I want to say it again. I appreciate what you do for the people who've come into your life, who've needed your help. And I see how your students interact with you, and they love you and appreciate you. So I want to let you know publicly that I appreciate you too.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. So our guest this week has been high school tennis coach and owner of Papa's Candies, Jason Edwards. Jason, thanks for your time today. I enjoyed hearing all your stories.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
That's it for this week's episode of Stories from Real Life. Join us again next time for another great storytelling journey. Until then, don't forget to shine your light wherever you go.
That was Stories from Real Life. Join us again next week for another great storytelling journey. See you next time.